Hello, everyone. I'm Jissa Joy, coordinating editor at Kumar Publishers, and super excited to have you all here. Excited about all the amazing conversations that we are going to have today. It's my pleasure to introduce two key speakers of this event. One is a strategist, a strong business developer, and an organization builder with over 20 years of experience in establishing and leading startups and large corporate businesses. He's also an author and a recognized motivational speaker. Today, he will be sharing with us about his life changing experience that made him realize there is something more to life than the everyday rat race. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Hari Kumar, the author of Mind Over Mountain. In these uncertain times of COVID pandemic, his book has more relevance. It brims with positivity and could keep stress and negativity at bay while we wait for things to get better. Next is the anger of this event. He wears multiple hats, such as CEO, entertainer, author, actor, international speaker, RJ, coach, columnist, comedian, and advisor to the Indian Leadership Academy. He also curates customized workshops for children and adults on the success mindset. He's extremely vocal on matters of leadership and environment, politics, sports, and entertainment, and appears on prime-time channels as panelist. He has written a book called Dare to Dream and is currently writing his second book about his weight loss journey and his dog's experiments with truth. So let's welcome Mr. Shekhar Vijayan. So please stay tuned in till the end, as I assure you, this event will be interactive and fun and will leave you feeling wonderful and inspired. Over to you, Shekhar. Thank you.
Thank you, Jiza. Thank you so much for this warm introduction, and a warm welcome to all the wonderful people who have joined us on this very interesting show today. Before I start, I would like to thank Konark Publishers for this, and I would like to thank Mr. KPR Nair. He's not here in spirit, but I'm sure you'll hear this wherever he is. Mr. KPR Nair has been in the publishing industry since 1970. His name features amongst the most successful publishers in India. In a career that spans over 5 decades, he has been associated with famous publishing houses like Lalwani Brothers, Thompson Press, and Vikas Publishing House before he decided to start his own firm, which was Konark Publishers. Mr. Nair has held several senior positions in trade and professional bodies and is a recipient of many prestigious awards. Established in 1987, Konark Publishers is among the most respected publishing houses in the country with over 1,500 titles in English and a few in Hindi. It has published some of the best minds of the country like Dr. M.S. Swaminathan, Dr. A.M. Michael, and Dr. R.S. Paroda. Iconic editors like B.G. Varghese and Vinod Mehta, eminent journalist Kuldeep Nair, noted diplomats like J.N. Dixit and Muchkund Dubey, eminent jurist Justice V.R. Krishna Iyer, national politicians such as former Prime Minister Chandrasekhar and Dr. Subramanian Swamy, and A.G. Nurani, N.N. Vora, among other notables. The most recent authors include Madhav Gobole, Dr. Narendra Jadhav, Ambassador P.N. Azarit, B.V. Kumar, amongst others. This is pretty long, but that's what Mr. KPR Nair is all about. And a big thanks once again to Konark Publishers for making this happen today. So once again, before we start, I would request all of you to stay muted, other than Tanmoy, myself, of course, Mr. Hari, Shekhar Katuri, Mr. Nathan, and Big Big. And before I start, I want to talk to you about this very interesting book. I had a chance to read this book. I read this book twice, and I think this book is very, very relevant in today's day and age. I'm talking about this book, Mind Over Mountain. And this book exemplifies a lot of things in one nutshell. So before I start, I want to get Mr. Nathan here. Mr. Nathan, before I start, you're a wonderful storyteller. I have read your quotes, and Mr. Hari talks a lot about you. And he tells that Mr. Nathan is a wonderful storyteller, and I totally believe him on that. So I would love your perspective on this. You have read this book. You know what this book is all about. For the larger audience which is listening to us right now, what is that one striking quality you found in that book, sir?
Well, Shekhar, it's a pleasure to be here and listening to you. I have seen you. I've heard you, and your wonderful story of what happened to you before, after. I've seen all of that, and perhaps, in a way, you personify all what Hari has written in this book. So the central theme of the book is there is no mountain that you can't climb. And anything and everything starts within the 6 inches between your ears. And that's it. And perhaps for people who grow up a kind of way and who face obstacles of a certain kind, and the only thing that they can hang on to is the sheer grit, determination, and what that can do to individuals and transform their lives and others is what this book is about. It's a very inspiring book. Anytime you read that book, any page, you just want to keep reading it because the book is special. When I read that book, I could identify myself in the protagonist, in the person who has written about this book and talking about all this. So it's a very relatable book. I could go on and on and on, Hari and Shekhar. All I'll say is there must be a time when we set aside moments to read about what others have done, because in a way, it inspires us as well. So on that note, I'm going to hand this back to you. It'll be fun listening to Hari. It'll be greater fun listening to a lot of people in the audience as we interact with Hari. And of course, you're very, very special, Shekhar.
Thank you, sir. You just made my day. I think my mother's also listening to you as we talk. It's so nice to hear this from you, sir. I think it's an absolute pleasure. My day is made. I can switch off this call now. So, but on a more serious note, thank you, sir. Thank you so much. So, but for the larger audience, like I said earlier, we're going to keep this discussion very interactive. We've got Harissa's friends also joining us. I've also got a small quiz for all of you. I want all of you to participate because Konark Publishers is also giving prizes away. Now, as we talk, sir, I wanted to ask Mr. Hari this question. So, everybody's been talking about this book. We've got Mr. Nathan talking about this book. We've got Mr. Alphonse, who's from the government of India, the Minister of State of Tourism. He has also spoken about this book. We've got people of all ages talking about this book, and they feel they are able to relate it at a certain level. Mr. Harissa, from your perspective, what is the reason for this title, Mind Over Mountain? I think this title is so strong. So you'll have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, Shekhar, first and foremost, thank you. Thank you for hosting this, and thank you to Konark for hosting this as well. And most importantly, thank you for everybody who's either an early morning or a late in the evening for joining this call. Shekhar, to answer your question direct, the book is not just a book. For me, and generally, as we look at life, every single human being, if you are born on this earth, there is always something or the other in your life every single day. That is human to be human. You got problems, and invariably, your problem is almost always the biggest in life against anybody else. But honestly, there was always a question that is always asked. If you ever could give a choice without knowing anybody else in the world, would you want to trade your problems with that person? And almost always your answer is going to be no, because you know for a fact, it's only when you get a question like that, you look at it and say, oh, the others do have problems in life. So the whole book for me is on two things. One, the big word that I talk about, and we can talk about it in detail, almost every single moment in life comes down to attitude. It's the one big word. It's how you choose. What cards, what hand you're dealt with on a day-to-day basis is not your choice. What is your choice is how you play the hand and what you do with it. And that is very important to understand that. And two, what I learned from this trip and generally life after that has been, there is nothing in this world that your mind cannot conquer. There is, whether you want to call it a mountain, whether you want to call it the deepest abyss, whatever you want to call it. At the end of the day, with the perfect or a good attitude, you don't even have to have a great attitude, even with a good attitude and with my mental strength. And what I mean by mental strength is the only person who can give that to you is you build it yourself. And that's what this book is all about for me. It is not about how great I am or somebody else is or anything of that sort. It's what matters in life. And as long as you have that mental strength and you build it yourself and a strong attitude, life is great, Shekhar. So for me, that is the fundamental of what we have talked about in the book as well.
You, sir. Very interesting. So, while you were talking, your friends were itching to get into the conversation, which I could sense looking at them. And there was a particular quote you had put in the book, which is very witty, very sardonic, and which speaks a lot about what Mind Over Mountain is all about. It says a true friend is not one who bails you out of jail, but is in jail with you for the same crime. And on that note, I want to get Mr. Tanmoy, and we've got Mr. Shekhar joining us also. The Shekhar with a single K, not the H, mind you. And I want to know from both of you. You've been with Hari on this very interesting 12-day journey. And I have actually got 12 questions. I thought 12-day journey, 12 questions will make it special. But with the friends coming in, we're going to change this a little bit here. Tanmoy and Mr. Shekhar, I want to know from you, a journey is all about various emotions which come into picture. There are good days, there are bad days, there are worse days. How has it been for you when you read this book, when you read everything in this book, when you read the nicknames in the book? I want to know from both of you, how do those nicknames come about, first of all? I know there's Anamika. I know there is Lifeboy. I know there is MM. I don't know what the full forms are. I don't want to ask because this is a family audience here. And so, Tanmoy sir, please tell us.
Well, thanks, Shekhar, and pleasure to be here, and most importantly, pleasure to relive the experience, the memories, the treasured and cherished memories that we had on this trip some time ago. So the nicknames are something that we decided to come up with for each other, and it just was I guess, an extraction of people's personalities. So a quick example was, so Hari Kumar, as you just heard him speak, what word came to your minds? Probably something like wise, sagacious. So that's kind of what led us to his nickname at first, is Gyani Baba, because throughout our trek, we used to walk, some of you may know, we walked about 10, 11, 12 hours a day sometimes, about 15 kilometers, up, down. Net gain was probably 100, hundreds of feet, definitely, but it was an arduous task. So to get through that, we had to have a lively conversation. Otherwise, we'd always be focused on, oh, my leg hurts, my back hurts, this bag is heavy. So basically, we used to have deep conversations, often topics initiated and led by Hari, and that's how he got his Gyani Baba name, true to his personality and description. One other name that he had early on in the trip was it came from how he wants to optimize everything. Okay, he's always looking to make a deal. So before, when we were preparing for the trip, we had a whole shopping list of things to buy. And so as we were going through the shopping list, Hari kept saying, "Oh, we'll get this in Nepal. We'll get this in Nepal. We'll get this in Nepal. There's a market there. It's great. It's cheap. It's anyway." And so basically he kept saying, and Thamel is the place where this market is. And so he kept saying, let's go to Thamel, we'll buy this there. And it actually made me a little anxious because we were leaving maybe too much stuff to buy in Nepal. What if they didn't have it there, right? So when we get there, we go to Thamel. There was stuff there, but again, not up to par as what we had hoped and expected. But basically, the name that he got is Merchant of Thamel.
Merchant of Thamel, yeah. Like the Merchant of Venice, Merchant of Thamel.
Exactly, Merchant of Thamel. He's probably the best spokesperson for Thamel there is today.
So Tanmoy, I have to ask you this when I lead up to Shekhar, that is, what is the connection between Harissa's stomach and diarrhea for you? It's a running theme throughout the book. And I know that, you battle through it and you made it happen. And, I've read it and it's very inspiring also at a certain level. Though it's funny, no doubt, but very inspiring. Tell us about that connection. His stomach and your diarrhea.
I don't know if my diarrhea was connected to his stomach, but so yeah, I guess the truth of the matter is, and it's public information now, but basically I did suffer from diarrhea and dehydration for the majority of the trip. I didn't even realize this till much later. And Hari, so basically one thing about Hari which many don't know is that he actually has some medical training from his past life. And so he kind of saw me, he saw my eyes, he saw like my skin was a bit dry and dehydrated. So he kind of came up and asked me like, hey, what's going on? And then he did this thing where he pinched my hand like this and he pulled it up. And when yes, a healthy person's skin is supposed to go right back down. So mine kind of basically stayed there a little bit and slowly came back into shape. He's like, dude, you are very dehydrated. You need to drink like two liters of electrol Gatorade every day at least. And basically that's how he diagnosed me without me even knowing. And but given all these things happening, I mean, I was not the only one with issues. Many of us were having health issues. But the moral of the story here is persistence. It's positivity, it's mind over matter, mind over mountain, positive attitude, and just having that goal which you want to accomplish. So that's just, and the supportive team which brought us there.
One for
So
all
Shekhar,
for one.
I don't want to add one sentence, Shekhar, there. What Tanmay fails to talk about is what actually cured the diarrhea for him. And that's very important to know this, that once we got back and he had about 4 straight beers, then life was great. There was no diarrhea after that. I just want you to know that's when he actually got well.
That's it. That's what I was missing. And in India and in Hindi, at least they say dawa daru, right? So
No.
daru was my dawa at that time, I guess, when I came back.
Shekhar, sir, from your perspective, tell us about the trip. We got to know from Tanmay the lighter moments, but there have been moments I know which are very, very tough, and it really tests you. Mind over mountain. I think it's mind over matter more than anything else. So tell us, sir, from your perspective, how was the trip for you? What was the journey like, and how exciting was it?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for having me here. Hari is a natural leader, right? So from my perspective, there's one line in the book where Hari says, I think his mother told him, aim for the stars and at least get to the moon.
Absolutely.
I remember that. So from my perspective, if I hang it out with Hari, I'll at least get to EBC. So he aims so high all the time. So I love that about him. And I was reflecting on Tanmay's point of view, and I'll just come back to your point too. Hari has an answer for everything. And unfortunately, his answers are not straightforward many times, right? He thinks differently. So I just can't get it. And that's why my name is what it is, right? I think through for hours to then say, okay, what did Hari mean by this? Really, where is he going with this? And of course, ultimately, I get it. I prod him and say, why did you say this? Why did you say this 10 different times? And I get it ultimately. But that made me think of, and sometimes I think of these, great babas on the street who kind of give these fancy religious statements, the fancy wacky statements. They look nice to hear. You think you get it, but you don't really get it, right? So that's why I used to feel when Hari, come on, give it a little bit more. In fact, that's when I came up with a view how he's actually transformatively disruptive. I still believe in this. Every time I talk to him, I hang out with him, he leaves me thinking differently. And it always leads to some transformating thinking later. Oh my God, I missed that all the time. So that was the experience for me going through with Hari and his leadership all throughout. The second thing that comes to me is, as a head of the family here, you always have to take care of your family, your wife, your kids, everything else. But on the trip, it was nice and easy because Hari was there to take care of everything. So it was like, yeah, sure, Hari, you tell what you want to do, we'll just go with you. So that made life very easy. But on the other hand, reflecting on the trip, you were saying something, Hari?
No, go ahead. Shekhar is being modest here, just so you know. He kept us entertained for most part. His questions were not curiosity, just curiosity questions. So, Shekhar, continue. I'll let you finish.
Yeah. I will get back at me on that. But just going back to Shekhar, your point about the trip itself, it is in many ways for me, the trip really resulted in getting closer to what was core to me. Because we are in such a rat race all the time that we hardly take time to reflect on our lives, right? And we started the journey together. We sang songs, we hung out, we talked a lot. Several days passed by, and then it comes to a point where it feels like I know everything about others. Now you get into the solitary mode of reflecting. Where are you in this journey? And you just keep taking one step at a time against all odds. And then you get to a point reflecting that, what is my life all about? So when I started writing my journal, it was a lot about my own family and how I'm missing the family more and more and more. And it brings to the life the essence of what your true life is all about, because life happens on the mountains in that sense. Absolutely. But anyway, that I can talk a lot. Let me stop there and hurry back to you.
Shekhar, I'll get you going. Honestly, Shekhar, for me, if I were to reflect back on it, like I told you, in addition to discovering yourself, and I truly, truly believe my last sentence that I truly wrote, which was a direct quote from So Edmund Hillary is, it was not about conquering the mountains or any of that. It was ultimately conquering yourself and actually looking at life. And what Shekhar got to, and I'll be honest about it. Yes, it was, and in being fully open about it, high strung. I grew up and I have grown up as super type A, wanting to get something, always wanting to go, etc. But what this does to you is it is an equalizer. It actually gets you back to what matters. And the beauty of it was there was absolutely nothing to distract you other than you, yourself, and the world around it. There was no phones. There was nothing around you. And so for a moment, it's just unfortunate that it took a trip like that for me to reflect. And on the lighter side, here's what I'll tell you. The number of people have told me I've calmed down a lot, and trust me, this is calm down state, which is surprising, but still, from an excited electron, let's say, to getting to a calm down state. And that's all because of how you look at it. And I try my very best with every person around me as well, to try and look at what is the one positive thing. And you might think that there is life every single day. You might feel like, oh my God, this is yet another thing. Oh my God, yet another thing. And there's so much things that are overwhelming at every given day. Somewhere, somehow, I don't know what has happened, but what certainly has happened, Shekhar, is I look at life a lot differently. There is the positivity that you get with it, the optimism that you get with it. And of course, you need to choose the attitude to keep it, because as life always comes at you at 100 miles an hour. But irrespective of how bad it is, it's not like saying that could be worse, so let me be happy. No, it's what you have. It's not always looking up at what next. And that was my big change. Oh my God, till then it was just about what next. There was never a question of what was happening. And so that was the big change to add to Shekhar's thing, and value of friendship and the value of truly meaning and being in the moment. So I think that was the big deal. And that's a change in attitude. And then again, like I said, when I look back and reflect on it, it's just sad that it took a trip like that. And after several decades of me being alive, to actually reflect and come to that conclusion. But in a way, I'm glad. I'm very optimistic. I'm very happy that at least I got that. Many people go through entire life without getting that attitude, but for me, it was a great thing. And it doesn't matter what age you are. It really doesn't.
Thank you, sir. So I think that's what the Himalayas does to all of us, I believe. Sir, but now that you spoke about camaraderie, you spoke about friendship, I'm going to put three of you on the spot, and Nathan sir is going to be the judge here. Okay, so it's very simple. You all have something which you have picked up from the trip, and I want you to show it to the larger audience here. I think one of you has got a t-shirt, one of you has got a snow stick, one of you has got the goggles from there, the sunscreen, lotion, anything. If you can show this to the larger audience, and then we talk about that, so they can actually smell the book.
I have the t-shirt. This is drawn, architected, and we can talk through this at any given point. But
yes,
this is the Nepali script, and we have an inborn, beautifully, extraordinarily multi-talented human being that drew it during the trip. That is what made us who we are. And mind you, this was his sketching. That's all he was doing, apparently. So I can only imagine how good it is when he actually puts his heart to it. It was beautiful.
Thanks. No, thanks, Harissa. So basically, this font is, well, this style of writing is, I guess it's a Nepali script, but basically we saw this everywhere we went. There was these massive boulders that had something written on it. Of course, it was not written in English, but this was the style which it was written in. So we thought, hey, let's incorporate that into our visual identity, if you may, as our team. So that's where this came in. And Hari, do you want to talk about the name, where the name came in?
I'll let you do that. I'll give you the honors of doing it.
Okay, well, so basically, our team is called Fugged in 5. Now, why the name? It's because the town that we spent the night in, the first town that we spent the night in on our journey was called Phakdin. That's Phakdin. It just so happened so. And that just rang a bell with all of us.
So fast.
Exactly, it rang a bell with all of us, and we kept using it in ways that you would expect we would use it in terms of slang. And so that's kind of how we decided to have our name as Fucked in 5. In fact, we were not even going to spend the night there that day. That was supposed to just be our lunch stop, and we were supposed to carry on. But I believe I insisted that, hey, if we're going to be Fucked in 5, we need to spend at least a night in Fucked in. So we are Fucked in. And so that's why we were Fucked in. And that's where the name comes from, and the sketch as well.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
But Shekhar, a small nuance there. If you notice, one of the reasons we were successful in terms of not achieving anything, but actually enjoying this and making success for me, like I told you, is not achieving or getting there or back or whatever. That was part of the conversation. But the bigger part was exactly what Tanmay just said. We were so flexible and nimble between friends as to what we did and how we did it, because we wanted to live in the moment. We wanted to enjoy it, as opposed to trying to say we have to achieve so much or get there on day one. We have to get to this on day one or get to that on day two. It's not saying don't have goals or determination, but it's also equally important. And this is in life. It's not just about having the goals. It's also about being flexible about how you get there and being there with the moment. So what made it is, it was not just the destination that made the fact that we got to the destination that made things happy. It was the fact that we enjoyed the moment getting there and the journey getting there. And that was important to know. Shekhar, without NH, I'll let you weigh in on what happened.
No, I agree with you, Hari. In fact, I was looking for what I can share. I, again, from Namche Bazaar, I picked up one stone from there, and I still have it. I don't have it right now to show you, but it is one there. I really felt that it required to be captured in memory for quite some time, just because the journey of what I learned during the 9 days, 10 days at that time. It completely relates to what Hari said, which is the idea of just living as we go along as a part of the journey, being there for each other, because you know what, the life is such a gentle balance. One day I felt so good. The first day when Tanmay was unwell, I think he hurt his ankle. And I felt good. I mean, Tanmay, come on, you got to push yourself, right? And Hari was going through his rough time. I was thinking, you should push yourself too. But there came a time when one day I had my issues, and that life is so, it's such a balance that if your health is not right, then everything else falls off the cliff, right? You just can't be. And that's when I realized that, my God, you know what? We got to be for each other. Things can come and hit us anytime for anybody. And that life, as you think that happens in your real life, the whole life just got simulated in those 9 days, simulated in the real sense of ups and downs. And you learn how to rely on each other, how to stand for each other, how life has meaning much beyond, our own personal goals, if you may. So that's a big realization for me as part of the journey.
Thank you so much. I wanted to ask all three of you, what is this process of mummification all about?
So the problem, I'll be honest, for people who've lived through harsh winters, you understand the concept of layering. You understand that there is no one thick sweater that can ever stop any cold winter. It's not possible. And so you need to layer yourself. That was the first fundamental mistake, or the first learning lesson you get in the depth of winter, or when it's really cold. It's the number of layers that matters, and how you organize the layers that matter. So what happened with mummification every day is it became a joke. Because remember, you're 24/7. There is no warmth. There is no heat. You are kind of frozen 24/7, and it kind of seeps into your body. And you're cold, and a lot of your body doesn't move. And it's a fact. It's very, very difficult to move. And even when you are walking and trying to trek or walk or climb, even that heat doesn't compensate for how cold it is, right? So at night, when you're trying to sleep, now remember, your body is not moving and it's frozen and there is no heat or whatever it is. Now you're trying to layer yourself, and there cannot be any part of your skin that can be exposed. So what are you trying to do is you're trying to put yourself one into the other. It's like going into the sock, one sock, and then that sock has to go in. So the first one is easy because fine, you have your faculties in your legs and hands and you can move it in. But then just imagine once I put you into a casket, now how do I move that into the next one? And it became hilarious because plus the pain, what made it really fun, I think, and this is part of life for me as well, what made it enjoyable and happy is one, the attitude we took, but also the pain that you went through. And not in putting yourself in, but the pain you're suffering. You know your body has quit. You know it's paining. You know it's in severe condition. And then trying to put one sock into the other and trying and only to realize that your left side, once you put it this side, then your left side is exposed or your right side is exposed. And oh, it was hilarious. And the sheer lack of dexterity and the sheer lack of, it was just impossible for us to kind of get it straight. And that's what made it, again, we made it hilarious, but it could have been severe. We could have been cribbing and complaining about it all day, but instead we said, hey, this is fun. Time for us to even record it because it's a great memory.
So I think the
In fact,
Egyptians.
this ended up,
Yeah.
sorry, so just to add to this, so this ended up being a 20 to 30-minute process pre-bedtime, where we're wrapping, helping each other, zipping this, doing this, putting each other in the bags. So it was quite a pre-bedtime process. But the other thing is that, so Hari mentioned how cold it is, but even at night, when you are mummified and you're in the sleeping bag, you're essentially sleeping in a plywood box. So it's not really protecting you other than maybe from the snow or the rain. So it is an ice box that you're sleeping in as well. So it's not like you're sleeping in a nice toasty environment. It is freezing even after mummification in your sleeping bag. And there was maybe 2 places which had the convenience or the luxury at the time of a hot water bag. So whenever we went to one of these places, we would ask, do you have hot water bags? Invariably, the answer was no. But when we got it, that was like, oh, wow, finally, I'm at peace. I can finally be like warm at night. But that's what we do. We mummify ourselves with a hot water bag inside.
So I have to ask all three of you this. Nathan, sir, have you ever heard of a train journey in the middle of the mountains?
Yeah.
But this train journey is a little different. And I want either Tanmoy sir or Harissa to tell us more about it. What the train journey was in the middle of the night, I think at around 2 a.m. in the morning. I'm not sure, but sir, please tell us about it.
Tanmoy, I'll let you take a crack at that one.
I actually forget what this refers to.
Oh, that's fine. So I'll talk through it. So every night in 2 or 3 places that we stayed in, you're so exhausted, like Tanmoy said, you're 12, 15 hours, you're trying to sleep. And what woke us up, in spite of how deep the sleep was this train that was coming at us from all kinds of things, all across from about 10 feet away or 5 feet away. And it got louder and louder and louder and louder at a given point. After which you try and wake yourself up to say, oh my God, only to realize that it was just a few people snoring here. And the deeper the sleep, the louder the snore got. And imagine a snore that can wake you up when you're extraordinarily exhausted. And it was funny, honestly. Again, we had to take it as fun, because if you took it seriously and said, oh my God, I couldn't sleep and this is bad, then that is a big problem. But it repeated itself quite a few times, actually. And again, in the middle of the depth of cold in an ice box, and you're trying to even grab a few winks of sleep, all of a sudden it was, oh my God. And then remember, we didn't have a choice. The next morning, you had to get up early in the morning, whether you were ready or not, because you had to get through sections where you don't want the sun to hit and it gets very sloppy. You needed the ice to be packed and good, and you want to make sure you're through it. And so it got to, let's just say it got to levels which were, again, hilarious. That's the way I would look at it. And painful, but hilarious.
Tanmoy, you were at the receiving side, so tell us more about this, because you got to hear this, right, from Harissa.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what Hari described. The first night or two, so we were eventually we became convinced that it's someone in our group who was in the other room, because it happened every night, that every place we stopped, and we did not see any trains or train tracks anywhere. So by deduction, it's probably either Shekhar or it's Lifeboy.
I used to sleep well, so it might be me.
Interesting. I want to ask all of you, all three of you, what was that moment when you saw the Everest base camp? How did you feel? What was that emotion running in your head?
Tanmoy, I'll let you talk to it, and Shekhar.
Well, for me, I mean, it was a relief that the goal we had set for ourselves and the arduous path that we had taken was kind of halfway at least complete. We reached our destination, which was a major accomplishment. It was a sense of relief, sense of pride. It was joyous. I remember just like being ecstatic and just literally on top of the world, right? So it was just relief, and joy and sense of accomplishment. That's basically what it was. But visually, I don't know if anyone has been to or seen pictures of Everest Base Camp, but we didn't know what to expect there. So when we went there, well, basically what it is it's this large area from lots of large boulders, lots of rocks. To me, it seemed a bit underwhelming visually because we had some fantastic views throughout, and here we came, we're at our destination, but then we look up, Mount Everest is still there. Base camp is only 1/3 the way to the top. So it was kind of like, hey, wait a minute, we did all this just to reach 1/3 the way. Imagine those that have to go the other 2/3, right? So it was really a mixed bag of feelings there, but definitely joy, relief, exhilaration.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Similar feeling. It was the first time I saw it was underwhelming too. It was like, wow, is this it? It was like, can it be a little bit better? But on the other hand, this particular base camp, I believe, is actually on the on the glacier actually, right? So if something would come down, it comes right down on the base camp. In fact, it happened a few days after we left. So if you think about it, this is in the midst of nowhere, right? It's all the way deep in the foothills of the valley of Mount Everest. Mount Everest is still far to go, and then you start thinking, as you went through this whole journey, what did it mean to you, right? It was an emptiness to start with for me. Like, okay, just did it. Okay, now what, right? Why? Because I think Hari always said, me like Hari and others are goal oriented. Okay, we have to get this done, right? We go really hard at getting it done. Once the goal is done, there's a sense of emptiness. Okay, what's the next goal, right? And to some extent, we had to stop. I had to personally stop and just say, okay, hold on here. There's something that needs to be enjoyed. Nathan needs to say in some of his stories as well. It's important to step back and just enjoy the moment and feel the joy and sense of pride. So that's pretty much it, Shekhar.
Thank you, Mr. Hari, sir.
So I'll be honest, it was one of the toughest days for me personally. And the reason it was so tough is because I had a relapse. It was just before that, it was painful. And so we debated whether remember, there was, from the point we left on the last day to the base and back, there was no stopping. So it was one of the longest days of the trip. You couldn't stop, and you had to go all the way through. There was no place to stop or even take a moment of rest, and stop there and all the way back. You have to get back to the whole place. So all of a sudden, it became a big issue because one, I couldn't even get up the previous day. That morning too was one of the most painful mornings. I couldn't get up. My back had more or less given up, and it was at a point where we just couldn't. Then it was a debate between, do I let the pain overcome what we just did? And I'll tell you, it was one of the toughest moments for me because I did quit again. Multiple times, all of us had a moment where we literally tried to quit. And I can tell you, it was the friends around me, Tanmay, Shekhar, and the gang that actually pushed me, or if they were around, we pushed them. But we decided yes, and we said, I can't let it go, and let me just push it. Whatever comes, medically or otherwise, we'll deal with it. And we went. We did reach there, and I'll still tell you, the last moment before you see the open base camp or whatever, it's actually a turn that goes into the valley. And it's literally like many times whether it's in San Francisco, Seattle, any other nice place, Goa or anywhere, you're driving down a road and then you turn and you see the beautiful beach, right? And all of a sudden you see the awe of the ocean. The same thing, it was an awe-inspiring thing for me, not just because it was just a bunch of boulders or whatever it is, but for me, what it meant was at least I was there, and it was a big piece. I'll also talk about 2 seconds. So it was probably a high moment, but keep in mind, again, that was us being human. We'd forgotten some of the journey per se and the enjoyment of it, which came back, reflection, but we needed that destination. It was so bad. So we still had that goal. So that was who we were. But here's the other piece that happened. So we spent a little time there, enjoyed it, etc. But remember, we only had another 3 or 4 hours of sunlight, where you really had to get all the way back. And we were literally tired. And keep in mind, once we all are motivated and our mind plays tricks on us, right? You're fully energized, you're right there, and you get there. Whatever be your goal in life, you fight and fight and fight to get to your goal. But the moment, like Shekhar said, once you get the goal, whether you want to call it emptiness or not, suddenly the adrenaline stops pumping. And that's what the medical doctors would tell you. But here's the issue. Psychologically, that just kills you. So now how do I get 4 hours back with pain? And how do we get that going? And this is a classic thing in life, right? Which is why it is critical that we don't fight. We need to have a goal and a destination, but don't make that the reason for everything. Enjoy the journey, because the moment you get there, the rest of the journey is lost. And there is a big portion which is the rest of the journey. And when you in life go through it every single day, destinations and goals are awesome and you need it, and all of us still need it, but don't let that drive you. Don't let that be the only thing driving you. You know what I mean? Because the trip for me back was significantly tougher because you had nothing to achieve. You know what I mean? You had nothing to get to, other than I could find any flat surface would be good enough at that point, because you were anyway frozen, didn't really matter. And you were just lying down. So Shekhar, for me, that is again human nature of how life is. And it's very important to enjoy the journey. And every day, every step of the day, the glasses are half full. There is no question.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't matter how you look at it. And it's up to you what your attitude is. And that's what happened to us, honestly. But it was great. I mean, it was great. From the hospital, lying flat, not being able to move to get there was for me a moment. And this is the same thing, right? When emotions run high, I promise you, not a single one of us had a dry eye. None of us did. And that was not crying for the sake of crying. It was just happiness. It was just the bliss of getting there. And honestly, I always, in book 2, I differentiate between happiness and joy with bliss. And for me, bliss defines what you need to be in life. And if you go back to ancient scriptures across religions, you'll tell you the same thing. You need bliss. You need peace. Happiness that comes with peace. And so the journey being critical, sorry, I'm just trying to say the journey absolutely needs to be critical, not the destination alone.
Harissa, you have this unique knack of being objective while making others emotional around you. I'm telling you, because I can see it right now in front of me. So I have to ask all of you this question. What does courage mean to each one of you, including Mr. Nathan?
Nathan, I'll start with you because we've shared enough the past number of years.
Courage for me is just being honest, both with yourself and with people who are around you.
Maybe I'll go next. Yeah. So I guess courage for me, and something that came out, helped me define courage, maybe even through this trip, is I think courage, at least to me, means the ability and the aspiration to do something extraordinary, because if you don't, you're most likely going to be mired to mediocrity. You're going to be average. So if you don't want to be average, you need to do something extraordinary. You need to do something that is out of your normal way of life. And to me, to be able to think that and follow through on that, that is courage.
Shekhar?
Yeah, sorry. For me, courage really is, what I learned in the trip really is, courage for me is a willingness to be weak. And I say that because many times we portray a wheel of, strength, which sometimes is necessary. But on the other hand, through the trip, when it tests too hard, you just have to be willing to say that, listen, I'm weak, I just can't do this. And guess what? It is in that moment of being honest to yourself and honest to your people around you that then the camaraderie comes in, everybody comes in and just takes care of you. And the courage is essentially to be honest in that sense.
So Shekhar, I will add to that. For me, not just the trip, throughout the change over the last 8 or 10 years, and some of it could be simply me getting old. That's inevitable, but it comes with what I define as courage. For me, courage is actually trying to do what you want to do every day against all odds. Being yourself, being your authentic self to do what you want. Now, circumstances can drive you to do things you don't necessarily want to do always. But as long as I keep it straight, keep it ethical, keep it honest, keep it transparent, keep it completely straight, and being yourself, not trying to just do something because, well, somebody said that, being yourself. And most importantly, like I said, doing things that matter to you, doing things that matter to you every single day. And that's a very small number of things. If you go back at it, if you start introspecting yourself every day and to be vulnerable enough to say, this is what I want. It doesn't matter that all I want is, I don't know, happiness every day for doing 3 things. It doesn't matter that you didn't want to be the richest person in the world or this thing or whatever. It doesn't really matter. What matters is the courage to be your authentic self. And I'll tell you, like I told you, I was on one of the fastest corporate paths, if you may, in my life in terms of growth. I flew through the levels, flew through everything else in life. And to be the authentic self, like I said, I was honestly many a time, Nathan and I've had enough conversations about this, he knows this. Many times I questioned myself, was I old enough to have the maturity to be in the jobs I had? I mean, they were so large, so huge. And did I have the always necessary EQ to do that? No. One of the reasons, I'll be honest, this is where camaraderie and friendship comes in. But I had at least the maturity in me to understand that I was weak in something. I'll give you, and I'll just, not because Nathan's on the call, I'll tell you, he was an emotional backstop for me, I don't know, for what, 8 years straight. And that's partly because he had different experiences and a different set of maturity. So I had all these massive roles. I'm guessing somebody thought I was smart and good enough to be in these big jobs and continue to be in this job, but it takes a toll. Remember, leadership is all about standing against the wind, and you're alone. At the top, things get very rare. The air is very, very thin. And so having friends, having people you can rely on, having people you can actually be your vulnerable self, I want to call that courage. I want to call that saying, I didn't know, I don't know. And I'll have Nathan weigh in. I don't know the number of conversations we've had that had nothing to do with the job. It was just, how do you handle the situation? Right. And because remember, at the levels we are working at, including where I had reached, it's not always black and white. It's true, it's authentic, it is legal, it's ethical, but it's still not black and white. And that's the difficulty you have. I certainly will tell you, I'm a better person for that today. Nathan, I'll definitely have you spend 2 minutes on it, please.
Courage is also, even as you speak, Hari, I was very evoked by something that you said. Courage is also standing up for what you think is right. The ability to stand howsoever tall, short, but in the face of all kinds of the mountains, as you talk about, and stay the course because it's the right thing for you to do. That is courage. And that doesn't come easily. You talked about attitude prior, Hari. It requires tons of this. It requires a resolve. It requires grit. Shekhar said that. You got to think that with a little bit of self-awareness, knowing that you're vulnerable as well. There are no whites, there are no blacks. And yet, as Tanmoy said, there is something that you have to achieve. If that is courage, that's what you got to do, and you got to stand up for what you think is right. That's what I'd say.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So I also have got 2 of my friends who have joined in. There are 2 people I've mentored, and they are around 20, 21-year-old. And I'm sure this is gold. This is gold dust for them, this information, because I think at a very young age, people have not been taught to be courageous. And I think we have hit on a very interesting point about being courageous and about being open and being honest and being vulnerable. So for the larger audience out here who's there listening to us, if you can put in the chat box, what does courage mean to all of you? While I move on to the next question, which is talking about something leaders rarely talk about, which is the fear of failure. And Harissa has actually taken that and spoken about it like a running theme in this book, sir, which is also, so he's spoken about the fear of failure and used that fear of failure as a source of motivation for him, which shows him at his most honest at his most open, at his most vulnerable self. Harissa, I want you to tell us more about this running theme you have of, the fear of failure and how it gets you to just maximize your potential.
Sure. So, Shekhar, for me, there is not a single human being. If you're born on this earth, you're going to have fear at some point. That's what makes you human, right? And most of it is a fear of failure, a fear, not necessarily just a fear for fear's sake, but a fear of being your authentic self, right? And the more and more you deal with things in life, the more and more you are in, forget just in public view, but just whether it's your immediate friends, your family, your circles, your whatever your circles are, the fact that you set your target, you do something and you actually fail, they're like, oh my God, what is he going to say? You don't have to even express it, but you know that's in your heart, that's inherent to who you are. Even broader, if you have the more mature conversation, say you're authentic to yourself, you still have a fear of failure for yourself. I've said to myself, I don't want to fail. I want this and I don't want to fail. Now, there's two ways people react to it. You can be paralyzed and say, oh my God, I won't do it and stay back, or I won't get into it, I won't jump into it. Or you can say, what the hell, I'm going to go do it anyway, and have the courage to stick with it and have the courage to push through it, right? And again, I go back to the classics of true authentic self, and something I got from Nathan, he won't know 10 years ago. You're truly like a swan in a lake. When anybody looking at a swan will tell you you're the most peaceful, you're awesome, how graceful it is. And the automatic word used for the swan is grace. But no one realizes how it's frantically trying below the water to stay afloat. And that's who you are. You don't want that in every day. As long as you're authentic to yourself, and as long as you push and push to where you are and not let the fear paralyze you, instead use that as the energy to actually change who you are and start moving forward. You might not get to the exact goal. And I keep going back to my mom, right? To say, you may not hit the stars. That's okay. You got to the moon, which is 100 times better than staying on Earth. I mean, from theoretically. So that's what I would call, and that is a fear, could be the single biggest motivator in your life if you let it, as opposed to letting it. It could be the single biggest demotivator as well. And I'll give you another word that I use in the book for heavily. I strongly believe that anything that stops you, the fear, anything in life that stops you is a limiting belief. It's a belief you have in yourself that's limiting you. It is not what the world is. If something is, and I talk about this, it's like the river. If you go hit a rock, and that's your fear that you're going to hit the rock, go around it. Or think of how can you go around it. Don't let the rock be the decision factor for why you wouldn't do it. And that's, for me, fear of failure was a big motivator, and it still is today. And it's not about whether the society, today I've reached a maturity stage which I don't really care whether it's a society or anybody else that judges me. I honestly don't care because I've been judged enough, so it kind of doesn't matter. For me, it is a fear of failure for myself. And that is what drives me significantly. I don't want to fail. If I've set a target, if I want to do something, if I want something in life, that's what I'm going to do. And I work towards that. It doesn't happen immediately, but I persist.
I'd like to add to that actually, because, oh, sorry, Hari, were you done?
No, go ahead, Kumar, please.
Yeah, so what Hari didn't mention, but something that I learned from Hari is not just not fear of failure, but he taught me to see failure as a scenario that you have to prepare for. You don't have to be afraid of it, but you have to understand it's a possibility that you will fail. And so you have to make plans, your plan A, plan B, plan C, whatever it is. You have to make alternate plans to avoid that failure in the first place, or if the failure occurs, what would you do next, right? So for me, and this is something I learned from him when I was working for him, is yes, there should be a fear of failure. You should be scared that you will fail, but be prepared for if that happens. So I see it today as a scenario rather than something I'm actively afraid of.
And just one comment there.
Sorry, if I can add a few thoughts there on fear of failure. What I learned actually from Hari is how he actually looked at the aspect of fear as an area where he invested in himself and made sure that he was able to overcome it with whatever plans just now Tanmay said about it, right? Plan B, C, and all that. But I think the core of it was his ability to get himself out of those situations with ease. Hari spoke about his age and all that. I felt that age is just a number, Hari. I think the way we saw you do things, and then the way you handled many of those things that people normally think is impossible, I think you made it happen, like MS Dhoni playing a final of a T20 World Cup and then knocking bowlers all over the place the way he wants to. So I think that's where I look up to you when I saw you from 2010. Maybe a silent spectator from outside of all these. I wasn't part of the trek. I would have loved to be part of. I wasn't even aware of that, so I wasn't. But I have been telling about you in terms of how you handle those situations, and then your courage. For example, we spoke about it a little ahead of this. I think for me, from you, what I saw as aspects of courage, where I think you were willing to walk into unforeseen frontiers with a lot of ease. I think Nathan must have been very close to you on a daily basis. You must have had a lot of conversations with him. I think those are a couple of aspects that I always speak in my teams about you, the way you carry yourself, the time you spend with people. You would have probably spoken to me on the floor a couple of minutes when you come to DU or something like that, because I always operated from the block where we had the the DU there. So, but then the point here is, are you making those connects? Are you willing to speak about those things? I think those stood out for me. Mind over mountain again. I think you are the man who can write it. The aspects that you've gone through on your physical side and the things that you wanted to conquer. Classic example of courage to do it, one. Overcoming the fear that normally a person will have and then say, hey, I don't want to do it. I'll give it up easily, kind of. I think you draw that thin line between aspects of fear and how do I convert it to areas of my greatest strength. People should learn from you. That's how I'll put it, probably.
Thank you, Mr. Sai.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're also getting a lot of messages on the message box where people are talking about courage. So Mr. Samneet says, courage to me is being consistent and standing by your values, even when you know when others won't approve of it. Potential to believe my own issues, decisions, and rectifying it with the right manners, courage for me. So I think this has opened a whole Pandora's box of what people believe is courage. And thank you, sir, for getting that discussion out there, because I think a lot of people understand it, a lot of people believe in it, and it's about what we interpret out of it. So now that we have spoken about courage, I know all three of you are very athletic, and I'd mentioned this earlier too. How about a plank challenge?
I don't know if we can do it on a camera, Shekhar. So I think we should probably try something else.
Okay.
I'm glad to do it, but I think my back will allow it, but that's okay. And I think let's try something else if you're okay, because I don't think it'll work on camera.
So I'll make something a little more simpler. This is for the larger audience here and for all of you. How important is the date May 29th? Harissa, I know you know the answer.
Yeah, I'll keep quiet.
Yeah. Anybody, you could put that message in the message box. If you give me the right answer, we've got a prize for you from Konark Publishers. They're going to send you a book. What is the significance of the date, May 29th? It relates to this book. That's all I can say. And then there's silence. Nathan, sir, you want to give a shot?
It's my dad's birthday, though. So the real answer is not my dad's birthday, but May 29th is my dad's birthday. But anyway, there's something other very significant that also occurred.
All right, so Josh says Tibet conquest of Mount Everest. Yeah, Josh, that's right. That's the day when Mount Everest was really conquered, and that's mentioned in the book too. So I think, so Josh, if you could send us your email address, I'll get the Konark team to mail you the gift right away.
Shekhar, if I might add just to that conversation I talk about in the book, people you learn from they don't always have to be above you or in a different role or whatever. They could be anywhere in life. And one of the things I do want to call out every single time, if any of you can help, and I'm very passionate about this, are the Sherpas. The authentic people of Nepal and their warmth, they are not the most educated. They are not the most literate in terms of what's happening. But when I talk about attitude and when I talk about being your authentic self, that's for me, the amount of stuff you learn on persistence, on courage, you can always say, well, they grew up in the mountains, they're great, they're athletic, their stamina, all that is great. But the attitude that they carry of making you comfortable, more importantly, every single thing, they never looked at it as an obstacle. They always took it around it. They said, okay, we don't have to fight everything at this point. Great, we'll fight it if we can. If not, we'll go through the elements. And I can tell you, they're often forgotten. like we had Tika, and I asked him one of the questions in his broken English. I asked him the question, how many times have you conquered Mount Everest? Right? Seriously. And for human beings, conquering it once is like a big flipping deal, right? And people kill themselves. He didn't even know the answer to it. It was like, whatever, right? And or you talk to these people, and it's not about just the achievement, it's about the fact of how you look at life. And so they taught me a lot, honestly, a lot of simplicity. And I would say super, super, super extraordinary leadership through simplicity. And I think that's probably one of the most authentic leadership I've seen. And by the way, they are going through hell. That whole community is going through hell, through earthquakes and everything else. So I'm supportive, everybody's supportive. If any of you guys can help, it's a plug. Any of you guys can help that community. They're all more or less Kathmandu based and around Kathmandu and Lukla, and it's tough. It's been a tough life for them.
Thank you, sir. So there's another activity I have for three of you, and it's very simple. It's either this or that, because you're on a journey of 12 days and you've been through various situations. So I'm going to ask you, give you two options. You're going to choose either this or that, as simple as that. All right, just use your hands. And so we'll start with aircraft landing or takeoff. Mr. Hari, I'm asking you this because I know you love planes and I know you're a pilot too. And this is for everybody, Tanmoy, Shekhar, with a single K. Aircraft landing or takeoff? What do you like more? You can only choose one. Mr. Nathan, you can also join us.
Take off.
Take off. Okay. Probability or reassurance? All right. Strength of character or sheer magnitude of desperation? It's nice. I'm making Mr. Hari think.
Yeah.
Planning or execution? It could be both. Yeah. Three. Yeah. Ascent or descent? The journey or the destination or the company? Yeah. We should take a snapshot of this. This is the company. Yeah. The desire to succeed or the fear of failure? All right. This is for all the cheese pizza lovers. Yak cheese pizza or dal rice?
I go with this. Depends on the occasion, but yes.
Sunrise tea house or Christmas in Chicago? Superb. Now for the last activity. This is for everybody here. Mr. Hari, the first word which comes to your mind, the first word, okay? When I say the word passion.
Love.
When I say the word travel.
Character.
When I say the word Kathmandu.
Bliss.
And this is for you, Tanmoy. When I say the word Nasha Bar.
To be revisited.
When I say the word water, Mr. Hari, water. What does water mean for you?
Peace.
The word emotions.
Me.
The gentleman Tika.
Leadership.
Absolutely. The 3D day.
Part of life.
And Namche Bazaar.
A beautiful bowl.
And AMA Damlan. I think that's the right word. AMA. Yeah.
The height of love, mother's love.
Dreams.
Necessity.
And last but not the least, but the most important glue which pulls everything together, discipline.
Attitude.
Thank you, sir. You've been a wonderful sport. And all of you, Tanmoy, Shekhar, Mr. Nathan, all of you have been great sports. It's been so nice to get to know so much about this book. And for the larger audience who's listening in, this is a very interesting book, Mind Over Mountain. You should go ahead and pick it up right away. It's got so many life truths, if that's the right word we use nowadays. They call it life bombs or life truths. please go ahead and pick up this book. I think it's very relevant in today's day and age, pre-COVID, post-COVID. I think any situation, I think it's a wonderful read. There's some lovely quotes in it. There are some lovely messages in it. There's wonderful storytelling in it. And I'm sure Mr. Nathan will agree. Mr. Nathan, I would love a last word from you. Being the storyteller that you are.
Joy, sheer joy. That sums up what this event is about.
Thank you, sir. Jiza, I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Over to you, Jiza.
Yes, thank you so much for a lively discussion. Since Mr. Nayak could not attend this conversation, so on his behalf, I want to thank all of you. It was it was a pleasure to listen to the interaction that we had today. I would like to applaud Mr. Hari and Mr. Shekhar Vijayan for the conversation that kept all of us captivated throughout. And I also like to thank the two friends of Mr. Hari, Tanmoy, Shekhar, and even Nathan, who found the time out to be part of this today's conversation. So the healthy banter and the experiences that you shared helped us connect more with the book. So a lot has already been discussed about this book. It's an inspirational read, as already pointed out by everyone who spoke. It's a book that urges you to reconsider your priorities and face the challenges that life throws at you with a big smile. So the lively spark to this conversation was added by Mr. Shekhar. Thank you for keeping this interaction candid and for bringing out the best in everyone. The message of this book was effectively communicated to everyone today. I hope we can have more interactions in future. I thank everyone in the audience as well for taking the time out and being part of this event. I hope you enjoyed it. I can assure you that the book will also not disappoint you. And by the time you finish reading, you will be able to view life from a fresh perspective. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Jiza. Time for you to write a book now, looks like. But before we finish, can we get everybody who's on, Mr. Hari, with your permission, that is, everybody who's on this call, if they could join us on video, we can all take a quick snapshot if we can. Jiza, would that be fine?
Sure, yes, why not?
So, for some strange reason, my video has not been getting switched on. So I logged off 2 times and came in. Sorry for that.
No problem, sir. But your presence is important.
Yeah, I'm there very much. Enjoyed the session as well. God bless you, Hari. Wish you many more. Another book writer is already ready in the form of me. I've taken inspiration from you. So we'll see there.
Thank you.
Sushil, can you please take it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we also have Sushil who's joining us. He's like the, they say the theater circuit, the voice of God. He's the person who's managing things behind.
Yeah, Sushil, can you please take a grab of everyone?
He's there. Sorry, you're getting a lot of messages on the book. A lot of people want to pick up the book. A lot of messages are coming in the message box. Somebody has sent a message for you. All the best, Mr. Hari, for your book. God bless Mr. Hari. Kajal says, thank you for the wonderful event. Ryan has also sent his email address because he's won the contest. And for everybody else who's listening in, if you could also create a short reel or put out a post on LinkedIn or Instagram or on Facebook and use the hashtag #MindOverMountain and tag Mr. Hari and tag me or even Konark Publishers and tell us what you liked about the book. You've got a prize waiting for you.
Thanks, guys. I know it's either Saturday morning, evening, whatever be the time. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye,
you.
Tan.
Bye, Nathan.
Bye,
Bye,
Sue.
Hari. Bye,
Thank you.
Tanmay.
Bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye, Nathan sir.
Bye-bye.